If you're trying to understand what neonatal abstinence syndrome, or NAS, might mean for your child or a child you may be adopting or expecting, I want to start here. There isn't just one way that NAS looks. Many people think that they know what NAS looks like. I thought I did too, based on my research. My name is Emma, and I'm the mom of a child with neonatal abstinence syndrome, often called NAS, and sometimes referred to as NOWS, neonatal opioid withdrawal syndrome. This isn't a medical explanation or medical advice. I wouldn't know how to start with that anyway. This is just simply our lived experience. Before I talk about what NAS actually looked like for my son early on and as he grew, I want to start with what people often expect NAS to look like, based on either what they're told or their research. A lot of people assume NAS only happens when illicit drugs are involved, but the drugs can be prescribed or not. They assume that once the baby leaves the NICU, all the challenges are resolved. They definitely are not. They assume NAS only affects infancy. It doesn't. For many kids, this is lifelong. They assume NAS is rare. In reality, one baby is diagnosed approximately every 24 minutes in the United States. And they assume that medical professionals always know how to treat children born with NAS. More often than not, they don't, especially outside of the NICU. So let's start at the beginning. Early on, I was fortunate in some really important ways. My son had a clear diagnosis, and he was born in a hospital with significant experience treating NAS in the NICU. Not every family gets that. Some parents take their babies home without a diagnosis and spend months, even years, wondering why things feel so hard. We did end up having a multi-week NICU stay. It involved multiple medications, learning medical scoring systems, and a lot of waiting. Lots and lots of waiting. Watching monitors. Sitting in the same chair for hours, wondering what the next score would bring. And when we finally got to go home, the challenges didn't end. They simply changed, and they continue to this day. One important thing to understand about the NICU is that the goal, most of the time, isn't to eliminate all withdrawal symptoms. The goal is to get your baby through the most dangerous part of withdrawal, to protect their brain and their body as much as possible. What that means is that there's a high probability in many cases that you'll still be managing symptoms once you're home. Leaving the NICU didn't mean we were done. It meant we were no longer in crisis. In that first year, the biggest physical challenge was sleep, like it is for all new parents. But with NAS, it was more intense, and it lasted longer. Even his pediatrician at the time didn't truly grasp what we were dealing with when it came to sleep. And I actually don't think I did either. My son didn't sleep for more than 90 minutes at a time until he was 7 months old. He would only nap if he was held or worn. It was the kind of sleep pattern that isn't typical, even for an infant who's generally cranky. And at the time, I didn't really fully understand how abnormal those sleep patterns were. I just knew that I was exhausted, and so was my son. And even though things clearly got much better, 6 years later, sleep is still an issue for us. Although, unlike then, we do actually get real sleep. The other major physical challenge that first year was finding the right formula. I was really lucky that my son was a good eater. Not every baby is, but he did need specialized formula during his first 6 months to avoid a lot of gas and stomach issues. Of course, that formula was expensive and not covered by insurance. That all said, in many ways, my baby looked like any other baby. Aside from both of our exhaustion, I don't think anyone would have guessed that he had a NICU stay or that sleep was such a struggle for him. And I think that surprises some people sometimes. As he's grown, the challenges have changed. We encountered vision issues, which I later learned are common in children born with NAS. Then there were the chronic ear infections that required multiple rounds of ear tubes and eventually tonsils and adenoids being removed. We encountered speech delays and developmental delays. And of course, then we had behavior challenges. And we still do. I won't go into detail here, but his behaviors were often more intense and lasted longer than those of kids his age. And of course, none of those things were really catastrophic on their own, but together, they completely shaped our days. Other parents of children with NAS may see very different challenges. And I was again fortunate that my son's behavior challenges then and now weren't so extreme that I couldn't find daycares willing to work with him for the most part. I know that not every parent has that experience. One of the biggest surprises for me overall is that I found each stage to be a little easier than the one before it. I don't know if it's because I've gotten used to things being different than what I expected, or if things have truly gotten easier, but they seem easier. I'll admit though, my son isn't a teenager yet, so I will probably revise that opinion later. We've been adapting as we go. One of my regrets is I spent so much time worrying in those first couple years about things that I truly couldn't control that I ended up not living in the present, not living in the moment. And that's where my son was living. And I think he deserved a parent who could live there with him more fully. Parenting in general is a learning curve. Parenting a child with NAS is just a different learning curve. And like all parents, I'm still learning every single day. But in those first early years, I learned things like this. The pediatrician that you carefully chose before your child was born may never have treated a child with NAS before. Your friends and family may not understand why you can't bend your routine, even a little. And sometimes people, even medical professionals, will use harmful language like drug baby, or they will make assumptions about your child's future. The best doctor we've had so far always reminds me, my son will tell me what he's capable of, no one else. And as the parent of a 6-year-old who's now thriving in school and obsessed with things like cars, Legos, and that trend 6-7, I can tell you this: your child will create your own path. That's what my child is doing. That path may include challenges. Ours does. But it will also include joy, growth, and possibility, because I believe NAS isn't a single outcome. It's a starting point. If this video brought up questions, emotions, or just a sense of recognition, you're not alone. I'm really glad you're here. Parenting a child with NAS can feel isolating, especially early on, and especially if you don't have a lot of resources. You don't have to figure everything out at once. I'm still trying to figure things out. If you found this video helpful, feel free to like or comment. And if this channel feels supportive to you, then I hope you consider subscribing. I hope I can support you. And I'll see you in the next video. Thanks.